I'm so proud of the work of Chairman Adam Schiff, in stark contrast to the irresponsible, almost criminal behavior of the previous chair of the committee. So what is the president afraid of? Is he afraid of the truth? That he would go after a member, a chairman of a committee, a respected chairman of a committee in the Congress? I think they're just scaredy cats.
Little pencil neck Adam Schiff. He's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen. He is not a long ball hitter. But I saw him today. Well, we don't really know. There could still have been some Russia collusion.
Okay.
That guy's talking about physical problems.
It's high school.
No, I mean, seriously, have you seen that guy golfing?
Oh,
like in a golf shirt?
It's,
like, not, I mean, well, who knows? Maybe Schiff's not a...
He picks it up and puts it in the hole. That's how he plays golf.
Maybe
okay.
Schiff's not a long ball hitter, but I mean, the president, he can't even run the 5-yard dash. He'd be wheezing by the time he took the second step.
So as we'll hear in a moment, Congressman Adam Schiff is perfectly capable of defending himself, but he did get the backing yesterday of the House Speaker. And putting Robert Mueller aside, the chairman of the House Intel Committee still has plenty left to investigate. And of course, there's also the Southern District of New York. But heck, you don't have to worry about
Always
that. That's long off.
New York.
That's long off. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, March 29th. With us, we have renowned ad man Donny Deutsch.
That's what we're calling him now.
It's okay. Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio is with us. Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial writer for The Washington Post and MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart joins us this morning. And national security expert, columnist at USA Today and author of the book The Death of Expertise, Tom Nichols. White House reporter for the Associated Press, Jonathan Lemire is with us as well.
You know, I want to go to Tom Nichols really quick. Tom, you know, I always talk about my favorite quote from former Illinois Democratic Senator Paul Simon, who said, in politics, sometimes when you win, you lose, and sometimes when you lose, you win. I find it quite striking that the Republicans have overreached, and actually, even after that letter, appear to be so desperate that they're swinging wildly, making personal attacks, trying to draw up enemies list for reporters. And I've got to say, I sense they're actually, for some strange reason, the ones back on their heels, because as Adam Schiff showed yesterday, and we will show everybody today, Donald Trump and his administration still have so many improper things that they did that may not be illegal, but they certainly are unpatriotic.
I think they're trying to use the period between the Barr summary, because I don't refer to it as the Mueller report. All we have is the Barr summary. They're trying to use this period between the Barr summary and the actual release of things that will come out of what we now know is, what, a 300-page report, to set the narrative. I mean, the Attorney General did this really very competently during the week, where he put out 4 pages that had some nicely phrased, carefully wordsmithed explanations in there that you really had to be a lawyer or an intelligence analyst to pick apart. And they're trying to set the narrative that the 1 or 2 sentences that are in the Barr summary therefore mean that there was no improper contact with Russia ever since, 1917. And I think that's, and I just don't, I don't think that's going to work. And I actually think some of the Republicans, I mean, the president's going to say what the president says, and the people at the rallies are going to believe him because that's the nature of it. But I think they're setting themselves up for some heartburn later, because I think Congressman Schiff is absolutely right that there's a lot more to this, and there's a lot of things we should still be really uncomfortable about.
Right. Well, and the thing is, it's politics 101. You don't overstate your claim. You don't overstate your case when you know that it's going to be undercut later on. They're trying to paint Donald Trump out as someone who did absolutely nothing wrong based on what we already know. We know about all of the lies. We know all about the meetings. We know the attempts at collusion. We know Don Jr. I mean, we could go down the list. We know Donald Trump lying and conspiring with other members of his staff to lie about that meeting. And Donnie Deutsch, we also know something else. And we're going to be showing these polls in a little bit. But we know the American people overwhelmingly believe Donald Trump committed a crime. And we know overwhelmingly that the American people believe Donald Trump lied. And of course he did. And how does this impact the election? Well, he was in Michigan last night, embarrassing himself again. I really felt sorry for him up there. So sorry for him. It was sort of a just a sad decline for the man. He's sitting at 31% in Michigan. He only has a 31% reelect. We're getting into Nixonian numbers here. And in New Hampshire, of course, the first primary in the nation. In New Hampshire, his approval rating down to 31%. His reelect at 31%. I can tell you, every politician that I've ever known, if your reelect was under 50% when you get the poll numbers back, you started panicking. This is a nosedive politically he's not getting out of. Maybe that's why he looked so sad and pathetic last night, and why he was swinging so wildly to no effect.
He did look pathetic. You know, Joe, 77% of Americans still want to see.
It was sad. You know, Dad, Donnie, we know him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know at what point we start actually feeling sorry for him. He looks so sad and weak up there, swinging wildly. He knows what's coming. He knows between the Mueller report and the low numbers and the information that's in there in the Southern District of New York, he's just a cornered man, and he just looks smaller and weaker by the day. And the more he screams, the more he sounds like a little mouse squeaking, desperate, trying to get run away, and he just can't run away from it. He has cornered himself.
When he started with the pencil neck Adam Schiff, it reminds me, and it's just sometimes we laugh, but, and I've said this before on the show, he's just disgusting to look at. He's obese. I wish we could put out that picture of him from behind playing tennis or playing golf. He's one of the repulsive, physically looking human beings I've ever seen, and yet
No, but it's important to do.
No, but Joe, it's important to do that. Joe,
let's let him talk that way.
Joe, but it's important. That's what a bully does, and just he makes fun of other people's physical imperfections. It's so ironic. 80% of this country wants to see the 300 pages. 77% believe there still was some form of nefarious activity.
Of course there is. We know there was. The question is, who are the other 20 or 22% of dupes in America? We know.
And the American people.
Don Jr. was begging, I love it.
Okay. Let's let Donnie make his point.
And then they had to lie. They lied about adoptions. Then Donald Trump gets around there. Let's figure something out. And then they put together this stupid lie. Okay. I mean, these are very bad liars.
But Donnie, what's your point?
No, hold on though. But Donnie, they're very bad spinners.
I'm just going to take a pause here for a while. We'll take my shirt off.
You look at what the RNC is doing. You look what all of them are doing. They're just humiliating themselves. Okay, see you later, ladies and gentlemen, Donnie Deutsch.
Thank you, Donnie.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Mika was trying to get in there. I mean, even Joe, to your earlier points also, he should be panicked for a few reasons. Number one, the last quarter's economic numbers, which were supposed to be 2.6% and 2.2%. 3 out of 4 economists believe...
Boy, that's limp.
Believe the economy is going in the wrong direction. You put up the New Hampshire number, you put up the Michigan number. And the other thing, and I once again, I sound like a broken record sometimes, is we cannot forget, is the Southern District. They're quiet. Yeah. They are really building their case about a criminal enterprise. Yeah. And once again, what we know is, according to Mr. Barr, there's no absolute collusion. We know there's obstruction. We're going to see more and more of that when those 300 pages come out. So you do feel him flailing. When he gave a little speech last night about my apartment, about the elites, my apartments are bigger than yours, I'm smarter than you, I have more money than you, it was a pathetic little man who does feel like he's corners.
I know. I was so embarrassed for him. That really humiliated me. But the thing is about Barr, every day that Barr allows this to drag out is a day that he sets Donald Trump up for a fall. Donald Trump wanted to get a lawyer that was going to basically be his personal lawyer, and that's it. Not be an attorney general, not take care of the country. It looks kind of like what Barr's turning into right now, unless he proves me and other people wrong. It's sort of, I mean, a guy, again, here we have another guy that's contributed to this country through the years, and he's wrecking his reputation because he doesn't want us to see the report that Donald Trump said we could see.
So listen, we don't know what's in the report, but it is very clear that the president and his minions have used this release and the Barr summary as a branding exercise to lie to the American people, calling it a complete exoneration when the report itself, the one thing we know, says it's not.
Well, and
so let's wait till we get the report.
You know, we haven't seen the report. We don't know what's in the report, but we do know this. We know that the Barr letter is meaningless. It's absolutely, it means nothing. It was a political document meant to protect Donald Trump, to give Republicans and to give Donald Trump sycophants time to spin wildly before we actually find out what Robert Mueller found out.
And use the megaphone of the presidency to brand it in a lie. Nope. But let's get to...
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.